Picture this. We are stepping into the heavy darkness of a hotel laundry room, where a maid named Sophia thought no one would ever find her. Every day she moved through the polished halls of the Grand Varelli Hotel, with her eyes lowered, trying to take up as little space as possible. She scrubbed glass, changed sheets, and swallowed every insult, as if silence could keep her safe. But silence does not always protect you. Sometimes it only teaches cruel people that you will not fight back, and before the night was over, the most feared mob boss in the city would hear her crying behind a locked door and pull her into a storm she never saw coming. The wealthy guests at the Grand Varelli barely noticed Sophia, and most days she was grateful for that in her world. Being invisible felt safer than being seen, when her manager snapped at her to bring fresh linens to the penthouse. Sophia answered with a small nod and hurried away. Even the older maids could see how tightly she carried herself. Down in the basement, Rosa, a woman who had worked there for 20 years, gently told her to stop apologizing when no one was angry. Sophia gave a nervous smile and apologized again. It was not politeness, it was habit. Years of fear had taught her to make herself smaller before anyone else could do it for her. She apologized for everything, for being late, when she was not late, for asking questions, even for standing in someone's way. The hotel she helped keep perfect could not have been more different from her own life. Crystal chandeliers glowed above guests wearing watches worth more than she might earn in years. Sophia looked neat, calm and professional. But beneath her makeup a yellow bruise spread along her jawline. No one asked about it. Some people noticed, then looked away. In a place built on elegance, pain was treated like an ugly stain no one wanted to acknowledge. That was how the Grand Varelli survived, by polishing everything until it looked untouched. Sophia leaned against her heavy cart, staring down a hallway with 12 rooms still waiting. Her body ached from the double shift the night before. Tyler had exploded again, and she still did not know what had set him off. Maybe dinner was cold, maybe he had lost money, maybe he simply needed someone to blame. With Tyler, the reason changed, but the fear never did. Sophia had learned to read footsteps, pauses, and the way he breathed before a fight. With trembling hands, she unlocked room 1812 and stepped inside. The suite smelled of espresso, expensive cologne, and fresh flowers. Sunlight cut across the room as Sophia moved through her routine. She smoothed the sheets, wiped the mirrors, and arranged everything exactly as the hotel required. The work was dull, but dullness was sometimes a mercy. Then her phone vibrated against her ribs, and the small piece shattered. She pulled it from her apron. Tyler. 3 missed calls and a string of messages. At first they sounded almost worried. Then came the accusations, then the threat. Her stomach turned cold. She shoved the phone away and tried to force her hands to stop shaking. She could barely grip the cleaning spray, closing her eyes. She breathed in through her nose and whispered the only promise she could still make to herself. Just get through the next hour. Back in the hallway, a group of guests laughed on their way to the rooftop. Sophia pressed herself against the wallpaper to let them pass. A businessman slammed into her cart and snapped at her to watch where she was going. She lowered her head and apologized, even though he had hit her. She hated herself for it the second the words left her mouth, but fear moved faster than pride. Silence had become her shield. Around midday, she slipped into the fluorescent break room, with a bruised apple and a bottle of water. The other maids traded stories about the guests in the penthouse, laughing in tired voices. Sophia wanted to join them, but something held her back. Tyler hated when she seemed too happy around other people. Once he had raged for an hour because she smiled at a bellhop. After that, she learned to keep her laughter quiet, her friendships thin, and her life small enough to avoid suspicion. So she sat in the corner, hungry and alone, pretending she preferred it that way. Her phone started vibrating again. It rattled against the cheap table like a warning. Sophia stared at it until Rosa noticed the fear on her face. The message was short, "Call me now." Then another came in softer this time, almost pleading. He said he was worried about her for 1 second. Guilt rose in her chest. Then the next message arrived, sharp and cruel, reminding her what would happen if she ignored him. Rosa touched her arm and asked if she needed help. Sophia forced a smile and said she was fine. Abuse teaches people to lie quickly, especially to the ones who might actually care. She left her lunch untouched and returned to the upper floors, with a weight pressing against her chest. Every elevator chime made her flinch. Every shadow in the hall looked like someone waiting. By late afternoon, she was running on nerves and black coffee, alone in a marble bathroom. She studied her reflection under the bright lights, fix the collar, hide the bruise, smile if someone looks, do not cry. She had become very good at playing the part of a woman who is fine, but pretending does not heal anything. It only teaches the wound to bleed quietly. Sophia grabbed the cold handle of her cart and stepped back into the hallway, bracing herself for the rest of the shift. Somewhere beneath her fear, a small exhausted anger began to stir. She could not name it yet, but it was there. She was tired of shrinking, while she wrestled with that feeling. The hotel around her changed, the calm elegance cracked. Managers hurried across the lobby, radios hissed with urgent commands. Large men in dark suits took positions near the exits. Sophia felt the pressure in the air shift before anyone explained why. Something powerful had entered the building. When a luxury hotel suddenly loses its polish, something serious is happening. Sophia felt it as she folded blankets in the service corridor. Denise, the housekeeping manager, came rushing toward them, her heels striking the floor like small gunshots. She ordered every housekeeper off the upper floors immediately. Denise was usually cold and controlled, but now there was real fear in her eyes. That frightened Sophia more than the order itself. The other maids looked at one another, unsure whether to speak. No one did at the Gravarelli. Fear often arrived before the truth. Whispers moved quickly through the staff. Was it a movie star, a senator, someone dangerous? Denise stopped in the corridor and demanded absolute silence, anywhere near the penthouse. The warning only made everyone more nervous. The maids crowded into the service elevator, shoulder to shoulder, while rumors bounced from one person to another. Someone said the whole penthouse had been bought out. Another claimed armored vehicles were in the garage. Sophia stood in the corner, gripping her cart, trying not to look afraid. She had spent her life avoiding dangerous men. Now one seemed to be waiting above her. The staff were gathered in a hidden conference room far from the glittering lobby. The air felt stale and tight. At the front stood General Manager Holloway, a man usually wrapped in corporate confidence. Tonight, sweat shone at his temples. Rosa leaned toward Sophia and whispered that something was very wrong. She was right. Executives did not lose control over ordinary wealthy guests. Holloway cleared his throat, but even that small sound shook. Then he announced that a very important guest had arrived. No one moved. The room seemed to understand the danger before the name was spoken. Holloway's voice trembled as he said, the penthouse was now reserved for Mr. Luca Moretti and his associates. The name landed hard. A bartender near the wall cursed under his breath. A front desk clerk went pale. Sophia frowned, not because she was brave, but because the name meant nothing to her. Holloway began listing rules. No mistakes, no delays, no personal conversation. No eye contact unless directly addressed. He spoke like a man trying not to anger something much larger than himself. Sophia listened carefully, feeling the old instinct rise in her body. Stay quiet, stay small, survive. Someone asked if the rumors about Luca were true. Holloway snapped that they were not there to discuss rumors, which only made everyone believe them more. Rosa stared at Sophia in disbelief when she realized Sophia had never heard of him. Sophia simply shrugged. She was not reading crime reports or gossip columns. She was working double shifts, paying rent, and trying to keep Tyler from losing control. Rosa whispered that Luca Moretti owned half the city the polished half people saw, and the darker half they pretended did not exist. Sophia did not know what to say. She already had enough darkness waiting at home. Rosa leaned closer and told her that men with money, lawyers, and bodyguards still lowered their voices when Luca Moretti entered a room. At the podium, Holloway proved the point by repeating the rules with growing panic. No one was to enter the penthouse alone. Any request from his men was to be obeyed immediately. A young housekeeper asked what would happen if someone made a mistake. Holloway stared at her for a long second and said they should make sure they did not. That was all. Sophia finally understood that this was not normal hotel anxiety. This was fear with a name. When the meeting ended, the hallways filled with nervous whispers. Staff spoke of rivals who vanished, judges who accepted favors, and businessmen who crossed the street rather than pass Luca's men. Sophia pushed her cart in silence, only half listening. The others feared Luca because he ruled the city. Sophia feared Tyler because he ruled her apartment, her money, her sleep, her breathing. Different worlds. Same tightness in the chest, she wondered bitterly. How strange it was that everyone recognized danger when it wore a dark suit, but not when it called itself love. An hour later, Sophia took the rattling service elevator to the penthouse. The floor had been transformed into a fortress. Armed men guarded the private doors. Silver trays waited untouched. Even the carpet seemed too quiet. Denise paced near the end of the hall, pulling at the cuff of her jacket when she saw Sophia. She grabbed her arm and told her she had been assigned to the evening turn-down service for the Moretti suite. Sophia's stomach dropped. Denise leaned in and gave the instructions again. Eyes down, speak only if spoken to. If Luca Moretti enters, become invisible. Sophia nodded, though her mind was racing. Denise softened for half a second and warned her not to attract the attention of men like that. They consumed everything around them, she said. The warning settled deep in Sophia's chest. She knew what it meant to live near a man who consumed the air in a room. She had learned invisibility from Tyler long before the hotel asked it of her. By nightfall, black vehicles lined the entrance. Men with hard faces moved through the lobby. The syndicate had arrived, and the whole building seemed to hold its breath. Staff hurried through their duties as if one misplaced glass could ruin them. Beneath the flowers, marble and soft piano music. The hotel was tense with dread. Sophia was arranging towels in a hidden alcove when the atmosphere changed. The chatter did not fade, it stopped. 3 broad men in dark suits stepped out of the private elevator and scanned the corridor. Then Luca Moretti appeared. Sophia looked up for less than a second before dropping her gaze. He was tall, dressed in a dark coat, and unnervingly calm. He did not need to announce himself, the silence did it for him. The corridor seemed to cool as he moved forward, even his own guards straightened. Sophia folded the linens faster, silently begging herself to disappear. But as Luca passed her alcove, his eyes shifted toward her for one brief second, her breath caught. He did not look like the monster the staff had described. That almost made him more frightening. His gaze was sharp and still, as if he could see what people were trying to hide. Sophia lowered her head at once, but the damage was done. For the first time in a long while, someone had truly seen her. Some storms announce themselves before they arrive. When Sophia clocked out and stepped into the narrow alley behind the hotel, a cold feeling gripped her chest. The employee path was boxed in by brick walls, dumpsters, and weak yellow light. It saved a few minutes on the walk home, so most workers used it without thinking. Tonight, Sophia slowed. Her body knew something was wrong before her eyes found it. A shadow peeled away from the wall. Tyler stood there with his arms crossed, his face tight with resentment, as if her fear were an inconvenience to him. Sophia stopped breathing. Her first words were an apology. She told him she had been working, that her phone had been put away, that she did not mean to ignore him. Tyler stepped closer, speaking softly, which was worse than shouting. He said he had been worried. For a moment, he almost sounded hurt. Then his eyes hardened and the mask slipped. He asked why she thought she could make him wait. Sophia gripped her purse with both hands. She knew this version of him well, gentle enough to confuse her, angry enough to punish her. She explained again that her phone had been locked away during her shift. Tyler smiled without warmth and said a locked phone was not an excuse. He moved into her space, smelling of alcohol and cheap cologne. Then he told her she embarrassed him. Sophia looked toward the streetlights, hoping someone might pass. No one did. Tyler noticed and tilted his head. His voice softened again as he asked if she was trying to make him look like a bad guy. That was how he always did it. He hurt her, then made her feel cruel for reacting. The valet stand was too far away for anyone to hear. Tyler reached up and grabbed her chin, turning her face toward the light. His fingers pressed into the bruise along her jaw. He sneered that she had covered it with makeup. Sophia swallowed hard and said she had to work. His eyes narrowed. He asked if anyone at the hotel had seen it. She froze. That was what scared him most, not her pain, but the possibility that someone might know. For Tyler, secrecy mattered more than guilt. He had built their relationship like a locked room and called it love. He let go of her face, but the sting remained. Then his mood shifted again, quick and practiced. He sighed, ran a hand through his hair, and said he was in trouble. He needed money. Sophia felt the familiar drop in her stomach. He asked for $1,000 as if she had been hiding it from him. She told him her paycheck had gone to rent. He laughed and said he had not asked where it went. She admitted she only had $200 left. Tyler's face changed. The wounded boyfriend disappeared, and the man who wanted control stepped forward. He told her she needed to work harder. Something in Sophia snapped before she could stop it. She said she already worked double shifts just to keep them alive. The alley went silent. Tyler's face emptied of expression. And that frightened her more than rage. He asked very quietly what she had just said. Sophia took one step back. He grabbed her wrist and squeezed until pain shot up her arm. Tears came fast. She apologized, and he used the apology against her, muttering that she always pushed too far, then cried afterward. The old confusion tried to take hold. But this time a small part of her knew he was lying. His grip tightened. Sophia looked around desperately, but the alley was empty, a few floors above them. Wealthy guests were drinking champagne, while she tried not to make a sound. Tyler leaned close and asked if she thought those people cared about her. Then he said she belonged to him. The words settled over her like a chain. Her wrist throbbed as she begged him to stop. He saw the pain clearly. He simply did not care. That was the truth she kept trying not to face. Love had never felt like this before Tyler taught her to confuse fear with devotion. Tyler finally released her. Sophia cradled her wrist against her chest. He acted disappointed, almost hurt, and said she made him act crazy. There was a time when that sentence would have pulled her apart. Now it left her strangely empty. He looked up at the hotel and asked what floor she worked on. She whispered that she had been assigned to the penthouse. Tyler's eyes sharpened with interest. He smirked and told her to ask the rich guests for money. When she said she was broke, he held out his hand. The message was clear. Whatever she had, he believed it was his. Sophia hesitated for 1 second. It was not rebellion. Not yet, it was panic. If she gave him the $200, she would have nothing left for food. Tyler saw the pause and stepped closer. His voice dropped to a whisper. He asked if she was starting to believe she could tell him no. She shook her head quickly, her fingers already digging through her purse. The folded bills felt heavier than paper. They were groceries, bus fare, the tiny margin between surviving and breaking. Tyler snatched them from her hand without looking down. He shoved the money into his pocket like he had earned it. Then he looked at her face and told her to smile more because she looked miserable. That nearly broke her. He knew why she was miserable. He had built the misery piece by piece and then mocked her for carrying it. He kissed her cheek roughly, a gesture meant more as ownership than affection, and ordered her to answer her phone later. Then he walked away with her last cash. Sophia stood alone in the alley, wrist burning, cheek cold, too tired to cry for the first time. The emptiness inside her felt dangerously close to anger. Sophia pulled her sleeve down over the marks on her wrist and walked back into the hotel. The Grand Varelli greeted her with marble floors, warm lights, and guests who never had to wonder how they would eat the next day. Her plan was simple: finish the shift, stay invisible, go home if she could bear it. But one truth followed her through the lobby. Tyler knew exactly where she was. By 9:30, her body showed the strain. She flinched at every elevator chime. Every unknown voice made her heart race. The hotel had walls, guards, and cameras, but none of it felt strong enough. She tried to reason with herself in the service room. Tyler had probably gone home. He had what he wanted. He would calm down. She repeated those thoughts until they sounded almost believable. Then Denise called her name, and Sophia jumped so hard she nearly dropped the linens. Denise frowned and told her to prepare bedding for the Moretti suite. Then she paused, studying Sophia's pale face. Sophia reached for the old answer and said she was fine. Denise looked unconvinced but too busy to push. Sophia was grateful and ashamed at the same time. After midnight, the penthouse floor felt different. The corridors were quieter, but not peaceful. Guards stood near the walls. Guests spoke in low voices. At the end of the hall waited the biggest complication of all: Luca Moretti in the master suite. Sophia prayed he would not notice her again. It was not only his reputation that scared her. Powerful men, in her experience, took what they wanted and left other people to clean up the damage. So she moved carefully, keeping her cart close and her eyes down, trying to become part of the wallpaper. The hallway was silent except for the soft squeak of her cart. Then her phone vibrated. Her stomach dropped before she even looked. Tyler. The message asked if she really thought hiding at work would change anything. Cold dread spread through her chest. A second message followed. He was downstairs. For a moment she could not breathe. This was the one place she thought might keep him away. She typed a desperate reply, begging him to leave. His answer came at once: come to the lobby. Sophia stared down the empty hallway and felt the world closing in. Before she could think, another message appeared. He said he would find her himself. Panic hit so hard the hallway seemed to tilt. Tyler knew exactly how to frighten her, without writing anything that would look dangerous to someone else. That was part of his skill. His threats lived between the words. Sophia shoved the phone into her apron and ran for the elevator. Some frightened part of her still believed she could calm him if she just appeared, apologized, and promised enough. The doors opened on the ground floor, and there he was, standing on the marble, watching the elevators like a man waiting for prey. The illusion of safety broke. Sophia felt the blood drain from her face. Tyler had dressed well enough to slip past the lobby staff, his suit making him look respectable from a distance, but she knew the tension in his jaw, the restless way his eyes moved. She tried to step back into the elevator shadows, but he saw her. A small victorious smile crossed his face. Sophia turned toward the employee corridor. He called her name softly, and several guests glanced over. That was the terror of him in public. He never looked like a monster. He looked like a man whose girlfriend was making a scene. Tyler told her to stop. Something in Sophia refused. She pushed through the employee doors and ran past the heat of the kitchens. Staff blurred around her, behind her. Tyler's shoes struck the linoleum faster now. He asked if she was trying to embarrass him, as if chasing her through a hotel was somehow her fault. Sophia gasped for air as the basement tunnel stretched ahead. Carts of dirty linen lined the concrete walls. The laundry room waited at the end, loud and bright and miserable tonight. It looked like the only place with a lock. She yanked open the heavy steel door, threw herself inside, and locked the deadbolt with shaking hands. A second later, Tyler's boots hit the tile outside. Then they stopped. Sophia backed away from the door, both hands pressed over her mouth around her. Industrial washers thundered. Steam curled through the hot air. Usually the rhythm of the machine steadied her during long shifts. Tonight, it made the room feel like a boiling cage. Tyler's voice came through the door. Calm and almost tender, he told her to open it. That softness made her blood run cold. Sophia did not move. She held her breath until her lungs hurt. Tyler waited, then asked if she really wanted to do this to him. The words slid under the door like smoke. He made even her fear sound like cruelty. Then the handle jerked down hard. Sophia flinched. The lock held. Tyler sighed as if she had inconvenienced him. He called her behavior insane. Her eyes filled with tears, but she stayed silent. Somewhere beneath the panic, that tiny spark of anger returned. Running from someone chasing you was not insanity. It was the clearest thing she had done all night. Tyler's voice dropped lower. He said she could not hide forever. Then slowly his footsteps faded down the corridor. Sophia did not trust it. She stayed frozen against the wall, while the washers pounded and steam thickened around her. Minutes passed. The adrenaline drained out of her all at once, and her legs gave way. She slid down the cold wall and landed on the floor. Everything she had held back broke open. The fear, the humiliation, the years of swallowing pain, all of it rose at once. A raw sob tore from her throat, too deep to stop. The machine swallowed the sound of her crying. Sophia curled into herself between stacks of clean hotel sheets, clutching Luca Meridia's world of luxury above her, and Tyler's threat outside the door. No one was coming, not the guests upstairs, not the managers. Maybe not even Rosa, who would assume she had gone home. Sophia had spent so many years making herself unnoticeable that part of her feared she had succeeded too well. Her phone vibrated against the concrete. She knew it was Tyler. She did not look. She only pressed her forehead to her knees and cried harder. Under the panic, a cold thought began to form. Tyler would never stop because she asked. He would only stop if something stronger blocked him. Above her, the Grand Varelli still glittered. Guests drank whiskey. Piano music drifted through the bar. And the world continued, as if nothing terrible was happening beneath the floor. But Luca Moretti noticed things other people missed. In the penthouse, he stood by the window with an untouched drink beside him, listening to his lieutenants discuss business. His eyes, however, were not on them. Something in the hotel's rhythm had changed. Luca watched the city lights while his men spoke behind him. A guard had returned from downstairs too stiffly. The concierge kept wiping sweat from his face. Security rotations had shifted without reason. None of it would have mattered to an ordinary guest. To Luca, small details were warnings. He had built an empire by seeing cracks before other people heard the wall break. Without turning from the glass, he asked what had happened downstairs. The room went still. Marco tried to say it was nothing. Luca slowly looked at him, and the lie died before it could grow. Marco went to check. The penthouse fell quiet, rain striking the windows in thin silver lines. Luca lifted his glass, then stopped halfway. Something was wrong. He had spent too long around danger to dismiss instinct. Minutes later, Marco returned and reported that a female employee had been involved in a disturbance downstairs. Luca's eyes sharpened. He asked what kind of disturbance. Marco hesitated, then said security had called it boyfriend drama. Luca set the glass down with careful control. The phrase offended him. Men used language like that when they wanted ugly things to sound harmless. Luca asked again, slower this time, what happened? Marco straightened. A man had gotten aggressive near the employee corridors. Security removed him from the property. Luca's expression did not change, But the air in the room grew colder. He asked which employee. Marco checked the message on his phone and said it was the quiet housekeeper from earlier. Sophia, probably. The name brought back the woman in the hallway. The way she had dropped her eyes, as if being noticed was dangerous. Luca remembered the bruise hidden under makeup. He stood. Marco frowned and said the situation was handled. Luca's answer was flat. No, it was not. Luca left the penthouse without another word. Marco followed, uneasy. The basement stripped away every trace of hotel luxury. No chandeliers. No flowers, no polished smiles. Just concrete, pipes, fluorescent lights, and the smell of detergent. Staff stepped out of Luca's path as he moved through the corridor. He stopped a security guard holding a radio and asked where the employee was. The guard blinked. Then his face paled as he realized who Luca meant. He admitted they assumed she had gone home. Luca went still. He repeated the word assumed, and the guard swallowed hard. The guard said she vanished after the incident. Luca's anger did not show in shouting. It showed in the precision of his voice. A violent man had entered the hotel, chased an employee, and security had lost track of the woman he was chasing. The guard looked ready to disappear into the wall. Luca was already moving deeper into the basement. Heat rolled out from the laundry area. Steam drifted through the corridor. Then he slowed. At first there was only the hum of machinery. Then he heard it faint, broken. Almost buried beneath the washers, someone was crying. Luca raised one hand, and Marco stopped instantly. The hallway went quiet except for the machines. The sound came again, muffled and raw. It was not the crying of someone being dramatic. It was the kind of sound a person makes when they have tried too long not to break. Luca turned toward the laundry room. A steel door sat locked beside stacks of linens. Marco muttered that someone was inside. Luca already knew. He walked toward the door with slow, controlled steps. The sobs stopped the moment his hand touched the handle. He pulled once, locked inside. Sophia pressed both hands over her mouth, panic exploding through her body. Someone was at the door again. Luca placed his palm flat against the metal and spoke her name. His voice was calm, but she recognized it from the penthouse hall. That frightened her in a different way. Luca Moretti was outside the door. The most dangerous man in the city had found her sitting on the floor, crying like a child. Marco offered to break the lock. Luca refused. He understood enough to know that forcing his way in too quickly might make the fear worse. Luca leaned closer to the door and told her no one was going to hurt her. Sophia did not answer. Her chest hurt from trying to breathe quietly. The room was hot, but her hands were cold. She could not decide what scared her more, Tyler coming back or Luca opening the door. Behind the steel, she heard Marco shift impatiently. Luca did not move. He waited. That patience unsettled her. Tyler never waited. Tyler demanded, pushed, grabbed, and punished. Luca simply stood there, giving her silence, as if her fear mattered enough to be handled carefully. He said her name again and asked her to open the door. Sophia squeezed her eyes shut. She wanted to answer, but shame closed around her throat. She hated that he had heard her cry. She hated that her bruises might be visible, most of all. She hated that a stranger could see the truth so quickly when she had spent years hiding it from herself. Luca read the silence. He knew the difference between refusal and terror. His voice lowered. He told her to take one breath, then another. Inside the room, Sophia tried. It came out broken, but it was something. His patience frightened her more than anger would have. Anger was familiar, kindness was not. Dangerous men usually announced themselves through noise. Luca stood outside the door without raising his voice, and that made her defenses falter. He told her he would not touch her. He told her she could stand as far back as she needed. Sophia pressed her forehead to her knees. A sob escaped before she could stop it outside. Luca's jaw tightened. He was not angry at her. He was angry at the man who had taught her to be this afraid of being helped. Marco asked again if he should get the maintenance keys. Luca said no. Inside, Sophia was backed against the far wall, knees tight to her chest. Luca's voice on one side of the door and Tyler's memory on the other. Every instinct screamed at her to stay quiet, stay hidden. Keep the lock between herself and the world. Luca seemed to understand. He did not try to charm her. He did not promise things too sweetly. He simply said that the man from downstairs was gone for now, and if he came back he would not get near her. That promise hit her harder than she expected. She whispered that she just needed a minute. Her voice was so small that Marco barely heard it. Luca did. He leaned his hand against the door and said she had already survived more than a minute. It was not cruel. It was true. Sophia cried harder because some part of her knew he was right. She tried to say she was okay, but the lie sounded ridiculous even to her. Luca asked if she could unlock the door. She looked at the deadbolt. but her legs would not move. She whispered that she could not. Luca asked why. Sophia could not answer, because if she opened the door, her life would be real, because someone would see the bruises. Because once she admitted Tyler was dangerous, she would have to stop pretending she could fix him. Silence filled the space between them. Luca understood enough. He looked at the lock, then at Marco. His voice turned colder. Step back, inside. Sophia lifted her head as the handle shifted. Fear flashed through her, but Luca spoke once more before forcing the lock. He told her to move away from the door. This time she obeyed. She crawled backward, shaking. A second later, Luca struck the lock. The metal snapped, the heavy door swung inward, and white steam rolled into the hallway. Sophia flinched at the sound and pressed herself into the corner. Luca stepped in slowly, stopping several feet away. He did not crowd her. He did not reach for her. The light caught the bruises on her wrist, the fading mark along her jaw. The way her whole body recoiled from him before she could control it. For one long second, he said nothing. The room felt colder despite the steam. Sophia wiped at her cheeks, embarrassed by the tears. Marco stepped in behind Luca and cursed under his breath when he saw the bruises. Luca silenced him with one look. Sophia immediately apologized, the words slipping out like muscle memory. Luca crouched, keeping enough distance to leave her a path around him. His voice was low when he told her not to apologize. She stared at him, confused by the gentleness. Everything about him looked dangerous, the suit, the posture, the stillness in his eyes. But he was not looking at her like prey. His gaze moved to the dark marks on her wrist, then back to her face. He asked who hurt her. The question was direct, without pity. Sophia swallowed and tried to say it was nothing. Luca's expression hardened. He told her it was not nothing. That sentence hit something deep inside her. Tyler had called it overreacting. He had called it stress, bad timing, her fault. His fear of losing her, this man, feared by an entire city, looked at her injuries and refused to make them smaller. Sophia broke eye contact. But the room already knew the answer. Luca asked if her boyfriend had done it. Sophia gave the smallest nod. The movement seemed to cost her everything. Luca did not explode. His anger stayed quiet, which made it heavier. He asked if Tyler had followed her tonight. She looked down at her shaking hands and admitted Tyler wanted money. She thought if she hid, he would leave. The words sounded foolish when spoken aloud, but Luca did not mock her. He only listened, calculating every detail. Sophia expected judgment. Instead, she found silence sharp enough to cut through denial. There is a difference between seeing a victim and recognizing someone who has been surviving alone for too long. Luca removed his suit jacket. Sophia flinched hard, expecting the motion to turn violent. It did not. He held the coat out slowly, waiting until she understood. When she still could not move, he draped it around her shoulders without touching her skin. Only then did she realize how badly she was shaking. The coat was warm and smelled faintly of cedar and smoke. That simple warmth nearly undid her. She pulled it close with trembling fingers. Luca told her she was safe for the moment. Sophia looked at him with hollow disbelief. Tyler had said those words too. Usually after he had broken something, Luca seemed to understand the doubt in her eyes. He did not ask her to trust him. He simply extended his hand and told her they were going upstairs. She stared at his hand, unable to move. What if Tyler came back? Luca's face went still. Something dark passed behind his eyes. He answered with quiet certainty. He would not. The words felt less like comfort than a decision already made. Sophia did not take his hand right away. That mattered. For once, no one forced her. She gathered herself, used the wall to stand, and kept the coat tight around her shoulders. Luca stepped back to give her room. Marco opened the path without a word. They moved through the basement corridor. Sophia unsteady but upright. Every sound made her flinch, yet she kept walking. It was not a grand act of courage. It was one exhausted woman choosing not to stay on the floor. Sometimes survival looks less like strength, and more like taking the next step while terrified. The penthouse was nothing like the chaos Sophia expected from a mob boss. There was no shouting, no drunken laughter, no wild display of power. The room was quiet, controlled, and dimly lit, with the city glowing beyond the windows. Guards spoke in nods. Expensive leather and aged whiskey scented the air. Luca walked ahead of her, but never too close. The distance unsettled her in a strange way. Tyler had always invaded space, calling it affection. Luca seemed careful not to take more than she could give. That made the room feel dangerous and safe at the same time. He gestured toward a chair. Sophia stayed near the doorway, clutching his coat like armor. The room was all dark wood glass and firelight. She was afraid of sitting on something too expensive, speaking too loudly, existing too noticeably. Luca saw the panic without needing her to explain it. He told her she would not break anything here. The words were simple, almost dry, and somehow easier to accept than comfort. Slowly she perched on the edge of the couch. Marco placed a glass of water on the table, then left without staring at her bruises. That small courtesy nearly made her cry again. Most people either stared at damage or pretended not to see the person carrying it. Luca stood by the windows, watching the city for a moment before asking how long Tyler had been hurting her. There was no dramatic softness in his voice, no performance of sympathy. He wanted the truth. Sophia wrapped both hands around the glass and tried to say it was complicated. Luca did not argue, he waited. The silence stretched until she could no longer hide inside it. Finally she whispered that it had been 3 years. Saying it aloud made the room tilt. 3 years. She had measured that time in apologies, covered bruises, missed calls, and rent money handed over with shaking hands. She started defending Tyler before she could stop herself. He was not always like this. He could be sweet. He had been patient at first. Luca did not interrupt. He knew monsters rarely arrive looking like monsters. They come with flowers, apologies, and promises to protect you from a world they slowly cut you off from. Sophia heard herself talking and realized how tired the excuses sounded. A hollow laugh slipped out of her. She admitted Tyler used to make her feel chosen. Then he started checking her phone. Then he disliked her friends. Then he needed her paycheck because he was between jobs. Then every question became disrespect. Luca listened without moving, his face unreadable except for the tension in his jaw. When he asked about the bruises, Sophia froze. She said Tyler always apologized afterward. The words tasted bitter. She had repeated them so often that they used to sound like proof of love. Tonight, they sounded like evidence. She described the cycle. Tyler would explode, then cry, then say he was terrified of losing her. He would hold her, promise change, and make her feel guilty for doubting him. Luca named it without hesitation isolation. Sophia tried to deny it, but her voice failed. She had stopped seeing friends because Tyler said they looked down on him. She stopped answering calls because peace at home depended on it. Eventually, no one called anymore. As the truth settled in, Sophia looked smaller and clearer at the same time, as if the lies around her were finally losing their shape. Luca asked whether Tyler had threatened her. Sophia did not answer at first. She rubbed the bruised wrist where he had grabbed her and whispered that he said he would burn her life down if she ever left then. Quieter still. She admitted the worst part. Tyler had convinced her that no one would care if she disappeared. A heavy silence settled over the penthouse. Luca absorbed the words without looking away. Then his gaze shifted to Marco, who was waiting near the balcony door. Underworld justice did not need noise to begin. Sometimes it started with one silent look. Marco pulled out his phone and began making calls. Sophia panicked. She begged them not to do anything. Luca looked back at her, steady and unmoved. He told her Tyler was dangerous. She said Luca did not understand. His voice stayed calm as he listed the facts. Tyler had tracked her to a secured hotel, assaulted her, chased her through employee corridors, and left her so terrified that she locked herself in a basement laundry room. Hearing it described so plainly made Sophia go still. She could no longer hide the truth behind softer words. Luca asked if protecting Tyler had ever truly protected her. Sophia opened her mouth, but no answer came. On the balcony, Marco spoke into the phone, digging into Tyler's past. Luca watched her carefully, not pushing but not letting her retreat into denial either. He said she had been making Tyler smaller in her mind, because the real version was too frightening to face. Sophia hated how true it sounded. For years she had turned a predator into a troubled man, then called her patience love. The room was quiet, but inside her, something old began to crack. Marco returned with a grim expression. Tyler Bennett, 32, had 2 serious assault arrests that had somehow disappeared from the public record. Sophia stared at him, frozen. Marco added that Tyler had been working as muscle for a local narcotics crew. Sophia shook her head and whispered that Tyler said those charges were false. Marco answered simply, he lied. The words were not loud, but they landed like a blow. Tyler always had a story: bad friends, bad luck, corrupt cops, people trying to ruin him. She had wanted to believe every one of them. Then Marco told her about the former partner. A buried statement said the woman had been hospitalized 2 years earlier, after refusing to empty her bank account for him. Sophia stopped breathing. Tyler had told her that woman fell down the stairs. Suddenly every old excuse rushed back, each one uglier than before. The missed details, the changed stories, the way he hated when Sophia asked questions. Luca watched the moment denial broke. Sophia covered her mouth with one shaking hand. She was not only afraid of Tyler now. She was horrified by how much of herself she had sacrificed to believe him. For the first time, the crime boss in front of her was not the most frightening man in her life. The memory of Tyler was. Luca lowered himself to her level and told her Tyler was far more dangerous than she had allowed herself to see. Tears spilled down her face. Somewhere deep down she had known. She just had not been ready to survive the truth. The next evening, Tyler came back. Men like him do not release control quietly. Rain tapped against the towering glass of the Grand Varelli lobby as he forced his way through the revolving doors, carrying his chaos into a place that had already chosen sides. The receptionist noticed him immediately. Tyler wore the same polished suit, but the charm was gone. His jaw was tight, his eyes restless. He demanded to see Sophia. The receptionist kept her voice professional and told him staff schedules were confidential. Tyler smiled as if she were being unreasonable. He said Sophia was his girlfriend and he was worried about her. For a moment he sounded convincing. Then the receptionist hesitated, and his temper cracked through the performance. He leaned over the counter and told her to call Sophia now. The lobby grew quieter. Before Tyler could say another word, a deep voice cut across the room. No, Tyler turned annoyed and then stopped. Luca Moretti stood near the entrance in a dark tailored coat, flanked by two silent enforcers. He did not look angry. He did not need to. The air around him shifted. Guests lowered their voices, staff straightened. Tyler's eyes moved over Luca's suit, his guards. The way everyone reacted to him. And for the first time that night, uncertainty touched his face. Weak men often recognize real power faster than they admit. Tyler recovered by reaching for arrogance. He asked who Luca was. Luca walked toward him slowly and said, "You are Tyler." The certainty unsettled him. Tyler demanded to know how Luca knew his name. Luca answered that Sophia had been very informative. Tyler gave a sharp laugh and tried to make it sound like an overreaction. He said Sophia was emotional, dramatic, confused. It was the same script he had used for years, only now he was performing it for the wrong audience. Luca listened without blinking, letting Tyler expose himself one careless word at a time. Luca corrected him. Sophia had not been dramatic, she had been terrified. Tyler scoffed and said this was a private relationship matter. Luca said no. Tyler's smile tightened. He looked around and noticed the enforcers had shifted near the exits. Panic flickered behind his eyes, but pride pushed him forward. He said Sophia belonged to him. The lobby went still. Luca's face hardened, not with surprise, but with confirmation. In that one sentence, Tyler revealed the truth more clearly than any file could. He did not love Sophia. He believed he owned her. Luca said she belonged to no one. Tyler's face flushed. He insisted Luca did not understand their relationship. Luca answered with facts. Tyler had chased her through the hotel. She had barricaded herself behind a locked door to get away from him. Then Luca mentioned the former partner who ended up in the hospital after refusing to fund him. Tyler's color drained. For the first time. He looked less angry than exposed. He stammered, trying to understand how Luca knew something he thought had been buried. Luca looked at him calmly and said Tyler should have left the city when he had the chance. Tyler understood then that Luca was not some rich stranger playing hero. He had found in hours what Tyler had hidden for years. Fear moved into Tyler's eyes, the same fear he had forced into Sophia again and again. He tried one last time to recover, asking if Luca was threatening him. Luca almost looked bored. He said if it were a threat, Tyler would not need to ask. The lobby was silent. Tyler said Sophia needed him, that she could not survive alone. Luca's answer came without hesitation. Sophia did not need Tyler. She had survived him. The words landed hard. Tyler's control depended on making Sophia believe she was helpless. Without that lie, he had very little left. His voice rose as he said she could not function without him. Luca's expression turned colder. He said the only thing Sophia truly feared was Tyler himself. Tyler opened his mouth, but no lie came quickly enough. Luca signaled to one of his men. A thick file was placed in Tyler's shaking hands. He tore it open and went rigid. Arrest records, debts, criminal contacts, names, dates, places, every secret he thought was safely hidden. Tyler's voice dropped to a whisper as he asked how Luca got it. Luca looked at him with open contempt. Tyler had mistaken cruelty for power. He had mistaken fear for respect. He had built himself up by breaking people who had nowhere to run. Now he was standing in front of someone who did not scare easily and did not need permission to destroy him. Tyler finally saw the hierarchy clearly. His confidence collapsed piece by piece. For once no one in the room was buying his wounded act, his excuses, or his rage. Desperate, Tyler said victims always came back. The sentence made several staff members look away in disgust. Luca studied him for a moment, then said victims return when they believe no one will protect them. Tyler's mouth tightened. He asked what made this time different. Luca's eyes darkened, he said. This time she knows the truth. The lobby held its breath. Tyler looked toward the elevators, as if Sophia might still appear and obey him. She did appear, but not the way he expected. She stepped out from the side corridor, pale but standing. Luca turned slightly, but he did not speak for her. Sophia's hands were shaking, yet she kept walking until Tyler could see her clearly. Tyler's face changed at once. He softened his voice and said, "Baby, tell them this is a misunderstanding for a heartbeat." The old habit pulled at her, then Sophia lifted her chin. Her voice was quiet but steady enough. "No," she said. "I am done making you look harmless." Tyler stared at her as if she had struck him. Luca watched without interfering. This was her line to draw, not his. Tyler tried to move toward her, but Luca's men stepped in. Sophia did not step back. That was the difference. Weeks of fear were still inside her. But for the first time they were not steering her body. Luca told Tyler that if he ever came near her again, there would be nothing left of his life to collect. He said it calmly, almost quietly. Tyler looked from Luca to Sophia and finally understood that the leash was gone. He backed away, humiliated and afraid, then stumbled through the revolving doors into the rain. The lobby remained frozen after he left. Sophia stood in the center of it, shaking so hard she had to lock her knees. Rosa appeared near the front desk with tears in her eyes. Luca did not touch Sophia or rush her away. He waited until she turned toward him herself. Only then did he ask if she wanted to leave. Not ordered, asked. Sophia looked at the door Tyler had vanished through, then at the corridor that led back to the basement. She took one breath and said yes. For the first time in years, the choice was hers. Later, Sophia stepped into a private penthouse above the dark river, clutching her bag like driftwood after a storm. The space was warm and quiet, with a fire burning low and rain sliding down the windows. Luca dropped his keys on the counter and told her the place was hers for as long as she needed. She immediately asked if he was staying. Bracing for the catch, Luca said no. Relief crossed her face before she could hide it. He saw it and did not take offense. He simply told her the building was secure and that no one would enter without her permission. Luca moved through the kitchen while Sophia stayed near the door. He mentioned that there were clothes in the bedroom and groceries in the kitchen. He said it almost casually. Avoiding the weight of it, Sophia tried to refuse. Her mind searched for the hidden cost, because Tyler had trained her to believe every kindness came with a chain. Luca did not argue. He only said she could use what she wanted and ignore what she did not. That freedom confused her more than generosity. No demand, no guilt. No debt waiting in the shadows. She stepped into the living room slowly. The silence felt strange. No footsteps to monitor, no mood to read, no phone buzzing with threats. Peace should have felt soft, but at first it felt dangerous. Luca noticed her scanning the exits. He pointed them out without making her ask. Front door, balcony alarm, bedroom lock, security intercom. The practical details steadied her more than gentle words could have. When he told her to rest, she nodded automatically. Sleep did not come easily, but at least for one night. The door between her and the world belonged to her. At 3 a.m, she woke from a nightmare with Tyler's voice still in her ears. For a few seconds, she did not know where she was. Then she remembered the penthouse, the locked door, the rain on the glass. Still shaken, she went to the kitchen for water. Luca was there, lit by the blue glow of a tablet, watching the city like a man who had not slept. He looked at her and said she had a nightmare. Sophia apologized at once. The word came out before thought. Luca set the tablet down and told her she did not need permission to exist here. The sentence left her silent. Tyler had made her basic needs feel like burdens. Luca slid a warm cup of tea across the island and said coffee would keep her awake. Sophia stared at it, unsure what to do with care that did not demand gratitude. He looked toward the windows and quietly said she flinched whenever someone moved behind her. She lowered her eyes, embarrassed. Luca did not press. He simply named what he had noticed, not to shame her but to show that her fear made sense. For once, she did not have to prove she was hurt. Sophia held the teacup with both hands. Luca continued in that calm, exact way. She apologized before speaking. She stopped breathing when her phone vibrated. She watched doors even in locked rooms. Each observation made her feel exposed, but not mocked. Finally, she admitted she had believed that if she followed every rule, Tyler would stop. Luca looked at her and told her that men like Tyler did not stop because someone obeyed them. They stopped when they lost access. Sophia sat with that truth for a long time. It hurt, but it also opened a door. The days that followed were quiet in a way Sophia did not know how to trust. Luca did not crowd her or force her to talk. He moved through the penthouse like a protective shadow, present but not demanding. A new phone appeared on the counter. A private doctor came to check her injuries. Soft music played in the afternoons, after Luca noticed that total silence made her anxious. Sophia kept waiting for the hidden bill. The moment kindness turned into control. It never came. Slowly her shoulders began to loosen, slowly. She stopped listening for Tyler's key in the door. One morning, Sophia stood by the window and watched sunlight touch the river. Luca entered quietly, paused and said she looked different. She asked how. He answered, less afraid. The words caught in her chest. She had forgotten what it felt like not to be terrified. Luca did not make a speech. He let the silence hold. That was one of the reasons she began to trust him. He never tried to fill every wound with words. He let healing happen in small, ordinary moments, a meal left warm, a door left unlocked. A question asked instead of an order. Safety slowly settled into her bones. It did not erase everything, but it gave her enough room to breathe. Then came the day she returned to the Grand Varelli. The hotel looked the same, marble floors, soft piano music, old money moving through the lobby. Sophia did not. There was no dramatic makeover, no sudden transformation into someone unrecognizable. The change was quieter. She walked with her eyes forward. Her shoulders were still tense, but not folded inward. She was nervous, yes, but she was not disappearing. For Sophia, that was almost a miracle. The valets kept working. Guests continued their conversations. Then the receptionist saw her and froze. Staff remembered the woman who used to apologize for standing too close to the desk. The housekeeper who seemed to vanish even while crossing a room. This Sophia breathed differently. Rosa spotted her from across the lobby and rushed over, pulling her into a fierce hug. She scolded Sophia for vanishing, but her voice broke with relief. Sophia hugged her back and realized, painfully and beautifully, that her absence had mattered. Tyler had lied about that too. Rosa held her at arm's length and looked her over. The bruises had faded, the hollows beneath her eyes were softer. But what truly changed was not her face. It was the way she stayed present under someone else's gaze. The front desk staff whispered, then fell silent as Luca Moretti entered behind her. Security stiffened, guests looked away too quickly. The room reacted to him the way it always did, with fear and respect. Sophia felt the shift, but she did not flinch. That was when Rosa understood how much had changed. Luca stepped beside Sophia, calm beneath the chandeliers. He asked if she was ready. She looked at him. Then at the lobby where she had spent years lowering her head. She nodded. The manager hurried forward, nervous and overly polite, saying something about her old housekeeping schedule. A flicker of old fear moved through Sophia's body. Luca noticed, but he did not speak first. Instead, he looked at her. Sophia understood the invitation. Her voice shook slightly as she told the manager she would not be returning to housekeeping. The manager blinked, startled. Luca's eyes moved to him, cold enough to make the man sweat, but Sophia kept going before Luca could take over. She said she had worked hard for that hotel. She knew its guests, its routines, its problems, and its secrets. She would not be pushed back into a corner because it was convenient. Rosa's face lit with pride. The manager swallowed and quickly offered her a position in guest relations. Luca remained silent. This mattered because the offer was no longer simply being handed to her. Sophia was standing there to claim it. Still, self-doubt rose in her like a reflex. She looked down at her hands and whispered that she might not be qualified. Rosa immediately stepped in, reminding the manager of Sophia's flawless reviews, her memory for VIP preferences, and the way she had prevented countless small disasters before anyone else noticed them. Luca finally spoke, not to command but to confirm. He said Sophia was more than capable. Sophia looked at her hands again. They were still, no shaking, no panic. No Tyler waiting to punish her for wanting more. She lifted her head and accepted the role. Behind the scenes, Tyler's protection had already collapsed. Old police records had surfaced. Witnesses who once stayed silent were suddenly willing to speak. The people who had covered for him decided he was no longer worth the risk. Sophia knew only pieces of it, and that was enough. She did not need every detail of his downfall to move forward. For the first time in her adult life, she was not searching for exits. Then the lobby doors banged open in the wind. Weeks ago, that sound would have sent her into a panic. Today, she simply turned her head. Luca noticed the change, so did Rosa. Sophia was still healing, still carrying memories that would not vanish overnight. But fear no longer owned every inch of her. The manager handed her the paperwork with trembling politeness. Sophia took it without shrinking. The symbolism was small but powerful. The same hands that once shook while handing Tyler her last $200 now held the beginning of a life he could not reach. She looked across the lobby and saw the dark corridor leading toward the basement stairs. The laundry room was down there, waiting inside her memory. For a moment, Sophia could almost hear the machines, feel the steam, remember the cold wall against her back. That room had been the lowest point of her life, but it had also been the place where someone finally heard her cry. She did not look away from the memory. She let it exist without letting it pull her under. Luca stood beside her, quiet, giving her space. Rosa squeezed her arm. Sophia breathed in, then out. The past was still there, but it was behind her now, not wrapped around her throat. Luca studied her, and there was something in his eyes that looked less like possession than respect. Sophia turned to him and said he had seen her before she could see herself. Luca gave a small nod, but she was not finished. She asked why he stepped in when everyone else had looked through her. He answered after a moment. He said hiding had helped her survive. But it was never who she was. Sophia absorbed that quietly, then she smiled. Not because everything was fixed, but because for the first time, she believed she might become more than the fear that shaped her. Rosa wiped her eyes and tried to laugh, asking if Sophia was ready to become guest relations manager. Sophia let out a real laugh, surprised by how unfamiliar and natural it felt. Maybe, she said. Then she looked once more toward the basement corridor. The memory still hurt, but it no longer owned the room. She turned away from it, lifted her chin, and walked through the center of the lobby. Luca walked beside her, not in front of her, not pulling her forward, simply matching her pace. That was what made the moment different. Sophia was not being carried out of her old life. She was walking out of it. The transformation was not perfect, and that made it real. Sophia still had healing ahead of her. She would still have hard nights, old fears, and memories that returned without warning. But she was no longer the woman begging to be invisible. She had found her voice, her place, and the courage to stand in the open. Sometimes rock bottom does not destroy you. Sometimes it strips away the lies until the truth is all that remains. If you stayed through Sophia's journey of survival and rebirth, drop the word forever in the comments below. Keep looking deeper, and I will see you in the next video essay. Every Mafia boss story is not only about power, money, revenge, or fear. Beneath the violence and darkness, there is often a painful human lesson about choices, consequences, loyalty, family, and the price of ambition. This story reminds us that no matter how powerful a person becomes, no one can escape the truth forever. Hundreds of people, and make others tremble at the sound of his name. But if his heart is empty, his victory is never complete. The Mafia boss in this story represents a man who built his life on control. He believed that fear was stronger than love, that silence was safer than honesty, and that power could protect him from pain. For years, he may have won every battle in the streets, in business, and among his enemies. But the most important battle was never outside him. It was inside his own heart. That is where he truly lost himself. One of the most meaningful lessons from this story is that power without morality becomes a prison. Many people dream of becoming rich, respected, or feared. They think success means having control over others. But real success is not measured by how many people obey you. It is measured by how many lives you protect, how much peace you create, and how much good remains after you are gone. The Mafia boss had money, influence, and protection, but he did not have peace. His life shows us that a person can be surrounded by luxury and still feel completely alone. Another important lesson is that loyalty is valuable, but blind loyalty can destroy lives. In the world of crime, loyalty is often treated like the highest law. People are expected to follow orders without question. Never mean giving up your conscience. A loyal person does not simply protect someone's secrets. A loyal person also has the courage to stop someone from destroying themselves. This story teaches us that loyalty without honesty is dangerous. Real loyalty should be connected to truth, respect, and moral responsibility. The story also shows the heavy cost of revenge. Revenge often feels powerful in the beginning. It gives a person the illusion that pain can be answered with pain, but revenge rarely heals anything. Instead, it creates a chain of suffering that keeps growing. One act of revenge leads to another. One betrayal leads to another. In the end, everyone loses something. The Mafia boss may have believed that revenge would restore his honor, but what it truly did was steal his humanity piece by piece. This is a powerful reminder that forgiveness is not weakness. Sometimes, forgiveness is the strongest decision a person can make because it breaks the cycle of hatred. Family is another central lesson in this kind of story. Many mafia bosses claim they do everything for family. They say they commit crimes to protect the people they love. But protection without honesty can become another form of harm. A family does not only need money or security. A family needs trust, emotional safety, and love that is not poisoned by fear. If a father, husband, brother, or son becomes powerful but loses the ability to show tenderness, then his family may live in a beautiful house, but still feel trapped inside it. This story reminds us that children and loved ones often pay the price for the choices of powerful men. The mafia boss may think his decisions only affect his enemies, but every secret, every violent act, and every betrayal leaves a shadow over the innocent people around him. That is why one of the strongest educational messages is this: before making a decision, we must ask ourselves who will suffer because of it. A selfish choice may bring temporary success, but it can create long-term pain for the people we love most. Another meaningful point is the danger of pride. Pride can make a person refuse to apologize, refuse to change, and refuse to admit they are wrong. The mafia boss may have spent years believing that saying sorry would make him look weak, but in reality, the ability to apologize is a sign of strength. It takes courage to face the damage we have caused. It takes maturity to admit that we hurt someone, and it takes true character to change before it is too late. The story also teaches that redemption is possible, but it always requires sacrifice. A person cannot simply say they have changed. They must prove it through action. Redemption means accepting responsibility, protecting the innocent, telling the truth, and sometimes losing everything that was built on lies. For a mafia boss, redemption may mean walking away from power, exposing corruption, saving someone he once endangered, or choosing love over control. The path to redemption is painful because it forces a person to confront the worst parts of themselves, but it is also the only path that can lead to peace. From a human perspective, this story is powerful because it shows that even the hardest heart can still feel pain. Behind the cold eyes of a mafia boss, there may be regret, loneliness, childhood wounds, or a deep fear of being betrayed. This does not excuse his actions, but it helps us understand that broken people often break others when they never learn how to heal. The educational value here is important. Pain should not become an excuse to hurt people. Instead, pain should become a reason to grow, to seek wisdom, and to choose a better path. For viewers, the lesson is not to admire the criminal lifestyle, but to understand its emptiness. The suits, cars, mansions, and power may look attractive from the outside, but behind them there is often fear, guilt, and loss. A life built on violence can never bring true happiness. A life built on lies can never bring true freedom. And a life built on fear can never create real love. In the end, the story of a mafia boss is really a warning. It warns us that every choice has a consequence. It warns us that money cannot buy peace. It warns us that fear cannot replace respect. It warns us that revenge cannot heal a wounded heart. Most importantly, it reminds us that the greatest power a person can have is not the power to control others, but the power to control themselves. The deepest lesson is simple but meaningful. Choose character over pride, love over control, truth over silence, and forgiveness over revenge. No matter how dark a person's past may be, change is possible when they are willing to face the truth. But the longer someone waits, the higher the price becomes. A mafia boss may win the streets, defeat his enemies, and build an empire, but if he loses his soul, he has lost everything. True strength is not found in violence. True strength is found in responsibility, compassion, humility, and the courage to become better before it is too late.